Hey guys, tonight we're stepping back, way back, to one of the most dreamlike corners of ancient history, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. You've heard the name before, whispered like a bedtime rumor between myth and memory. But tonight, you're not just hearing about them, you're walking through them, slowly, calmly, and with the sort of curiosity that somehow makes you forget you're supposed to be staying awake for this. Before we start, let's be realistic. You probably wouldn't survive this stroll. The desert sun, the ancient sanitation, the whole "there might not have been gardens at all" thing, it's not exactly Airbnb ready. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're watching from somewhere interesting, post your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where in the world you're listening from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stand before the walls of Babylon, the air shimmering slightly in the late afternoon heat. The horizon hums with stillness, broken only by the distant bray of a donkey and the soft hiss of sand against stone. The walls rise in front of you like something out of a fever dream, immense, sun-baked, and stretching so far in both directions that your eyes lose the edges. Some ancient texts claimed they were wide enough to race chariots on top of them. You imagine that for a moment. A casual lap around the city in a horse-drawn cart, maybe waving at passers-by below like some kind of Bronze Age influencer. The gates are colossal, their surfaces etched with cuneiform inscriptions praising King Nebuchadnezzar II, the man credited with building the city into the crown jewel of Mesopotamia. He's the one history most often ties to the Hanging Gardens, though historians still argue whether he actually built them or if they were a later Greek invention. It's the sort of mystery that makes scholars squint at clay tablets until their eyes cross. But for you, tonight, the debate doesn't matter. You're here, and the city hums around you like a living thing. The walls are made of baked mud brick, the kind that once gleamed a golden tan before centuries of sun dulled them to an ancient matte. You trace your fingers along the coarse surface, feeling the texture of time itself, tiny grains of river silt hardened into permanence. Every brick feels slightly warm, as if it remembers the hands that placed it there nearly 2,600 years ago. You imagine the workers, shirtless under the Mesopotamian sun, hoisting loads of clay and straw, muttering about the heat, probably making the same complaints people make about their jobs today. Inside the walls, the sounds of Babylon start to bloom. There's the clatter of potters shaping clay, the bleating of goats being herded toward the river, and the distant rhythm of drums marking some unseen ritual. The Euphrates runs nearby, its slow pulse feeding the lifeblood of the city. Without it, none of this would exist. It's hard to believe that in a land so dry, someone dared to imagine gardens that would rival paradise itself. You take your first few steps through the great entryway. The air changes subtly. It smells faintly of baked earth, olive oil, and something sweet, maybe dates fermenting in the sun. A merchant waves lazily from his stall, selling little clay amulets shaped like lions, the symbol of Ishtar, Babylon's patron goddess. He nods at you in that universal merchant way that says, "You don't really need this, but I'll make you believe you do." You smile back and move on. Up ahead, you catch sight of the city proper. Long avenues lined with houses made of mud brick, flat-roofed and modest, each with a doorway opening into shadow. Laundry flutters from the rooftops. A pair of children chase each other through the dust, shrieking in laughter before vanishing down an alley. Life here seems so ordinary, so human, that it makes the legends of the gardens feel even more extraordinary. The closer you get to the heart of Babylon, the more you sense the pulse of the empire. Every street seems to whisper its own rhythm. The shuffle of sandals, the creak of wooden carts, the low hum of conversation. Somewhere nearby, a temple bell rings softly. You glance upward, and the skyline reveals itself, a mosaic of towers and ziggurats, each layer stacked higher toward the sky. And then, faintly visible over the rooftops, you catch your first glimpse of something impossible, a rise of greenery, actual living green, cascading over a distant structure. It's subtle at first, just a suggestion of vines against the horizon, but your breath catches. In a city carved from dust and sun, the sight of leaves feels like magic. People around you go about their lives as if nothing special is there. That's the funny thing about wonder. It's always someone else's normal. You hear two men arguing in Akkadian over grain prices, completely ignoring the miracle of suspended gardens towering a few streets away. You can't blame them. Even miracles lose their sparkle after a while. As you walk, you think about the name, the Hanging Gardens. It's a mistranslation, really. They weren't dangling from ropes or levitating like some fantasy castle. The Greek word kremastos actually means overhanging, like terraces built one atop another. But overhanging gardens of Babylon just doesn't have the same ring to it, does it? You make a mental note. Sometimes history owes its poetry to translation errors. You pass a row of clay tablets drying in the sun, covered in wedge-shaped writing. Scribes dip reeds into ink, copying records of trade, harvests, maybe even poems. Somewhere among thousands of these tablets, someone might have once written about the gardens themselves. Or not. The frustrating thing about ancient evidence is how it loves to hide just enough to keep us guessing. At the base of a broad avenue, you spot a group of travelers dismounting their donkeys, brushing dust from their cloaks. They've come from far-off lands, maybe Persia or Egypt, drawn by rumors of this city that defies the desert. You wonder what it would feel like to see Babylon for the first time, without even knowing it existed until you arrived. You suspect it might feel something like what you're feeling now, part disbelief, part awe, and part, wow, I should have brought more water. A gentle wind moves through the streets, carrying with it the faint scent of river reeds. You follow it instinctively, letting it guide you toward the source of that glimpse of green. The sun lowers, softening its glare. Shadows stretch long and patient. The city glows a deep amber, and you feel something shift inside you, like the world is exhaling. You pass a shrine where a priest murmurs a blessing, his voice a low hum over the faint crackle of incense. He looks up just long enough to nod as you pass. For a moment, you wonder if he's blessing you or simply acknowledging that you too are part of the endless stream of wanderers who come seeking something they can't quite name. Somewhere behind the walls, you can still hear the sounds of the marketplace fading into the distance. The chatter, the bleating, the clink of coins. Ahead, the hum of water begins to whisper again, faint but distinct. You can almost imagine the mechanical rhythm of the ancient pumps, the legendary Archimedes screw, centuries before Archimedes himself. Historians still argue whether that device existed here first or in later Greek designs, but for tonight, it doesn't matter. What matters is that you hear it, the promise of running water in the heart of the desert. The path narrows as you approach the inner gate, leading toward the temple district. You pause for a moment, feeling the air cool just slightly. The scent of wet clay reaches you, fresh and earthy. Somewhere beyond these walls lies your destination, the gardens that have haunted imaginations for millennia. You take one last look at the great outer walls of Babylon, towering against the evening sky. Their shadows fall long and steady, as if they've been waiting for you all this time. And then, with the slow rhythm of a heartbeat, you take another step forward. The gardens are waiting. The next morning arrives softly, with a pale sunrise spilling gold over the city's edges. The faint mist rising from the Euphrates gives Babylon a kind of sleepy glamour, as though it's still deciding whether to wake up or keep dreaming. You find yourself standing before the Ishtar Gate, the most famous entrance to the city. and possibly one of the most beautiful works of architecture the ancient world ever managed to pull off. Up close, it's staggering. The blue glazed bricks shine like lapis lazuli, catching the light in a way that feels almost electric. The walls are adorned with rows upon rows of animals, golden lions, dragons with serpent tails, and bulls mid-stride. They look alive in the morning sun, as if they might start walking again once the archaeologists go home. You tilt your head back until your neck complains, but still, the top seems impossibly far away. The Ishtar Gate was dedicated, unsurprisingly, to the goddess Ishtar, queen of love, war, and, well, complicated emotions. Historians still argue whether the colors of the gate symbolized divine power or were simply a way for Nebuchadnezzar II to flex his aesthetic sense. Either way, it worked. The gate's vibrant blue would have been a rare sight in this dusty world, a statement piece that basically said, "Welcome to Babylon. Please be impressed."
A pair of guards in linen tunics stand at the entrance, their spears resting lazily on the ground. They look bored, the way all guards throughout history have looked bored. One of them yawns and scratches at his beard as you approach, his expression saying, "Another tourist come to gawk at the shiny wall." You offer a polite nod, and after a brief pause, perhaps deciding you're harmless enough, he waves you through with a half-hearted flick of his wrist. You step beneath the archway, and immediately the sound changes. The city's chatter softens to a low hum, replaced by the echo of your own footsteps. The air here feels cooler, almost sacred, as if the massive walls are holding their breath. You trace your fingers along the glazed surface, feeling the smooth texture beneath your hand. The ancient bricks are cool, even in the morning warmth. Somewhere within their cobalt depths, flecks of gold catch the sunlight like trapped sparks. A child's laughter echoes briefly through the passageway, then vanishes. You glance back but see no one. Babylon has that effect. It always feels slightly haunted by its own greatness, full of echoes from people long gone, but never entirely silent. As you exit the other side, you're greeted by the processional way, the main avenue that cuts through the city. It stretches straight ahead, lined with tall walls and relief carvings of lions striding proudly. This is where the great religious festivals once took place, where statues of gods were carried in elaborate processions while crowds cheered and musicians played. You can almost hear it, the rhythm of drums, the deep blare of bronze horns, the chanting of thousands. Today, though, it's quiet, just you and the distant cooing of pigeons. You start walking down the processional way at a leisurely pace. The paving stones beneath your sandals are uneven, worn smooth in some places and cracked in others. You imagine the centuries of feet that have walked this same path. Kings, priests, soldiers, merchants, maybe even the mythical Queen Amethyst herself, if she truly existed. Somewhere in the distance, the faint trickle of water drifts toward you again, subtle but insistent, pulling you closer to the gardens. On either side of the street, small stalls are beginning to open. A baker slides flat rounds of bread into a clay oven, the smell of toasting grain mixing with the sweetness of date syrup. A potter arranges rows of freshly fired cups, still steaming slightly from their kiln. He glances up, offers a grin, and says something that sounds suspiciously like a sales pitch in Akkadian. You respond with the international language of polite nodding. You notice, too, how the air feels different here. There's more moisture, more life. The faint breeze carries with it the scent of greenery, fresh leaves, damp soil, and something faintly floral. It's subtle, but unmistakable. The closer you get to the gardens, the more the desert seems to dissolve. A scholar in a faded linen robe sits cross-legged on a mat nearby, muttering to himself over a set of clay tablets. His beard is streaked with gray, his eyes sharp and tired. He catches your glance and gestures vaguely toward the north. "You seek the paradise of Nebuchadnezzar?" he asks in a voice that sounds like it's been marinated in dust. You nod, and he chuckles softly.
Many have sought it. Few agree on what it was. Some say it was a mountain of stone, others a palace terrace, and some, he says, lowering his voice conspiratorially, believe it never existed at all. He shrugs, returns to his tablets, and adds, almost as an afterthought, historians still argue whether it was here or in Nineveh. You thank him and move on, pretending you didn't just hear that existential spoiler. For tonight's purposes, you decide the gardens are real. A gentle curve in the road reveals a rising structure in the distance, a mass of columns and stairways half hidden by the city's low roofs. You feel your pulse slow in anticipation. The light catches on something wet, a glint of moving water, a reflection. It's as if the city itself is offering a quiet drum roll for the reveal. The avenue widens into a plaza. Palm trees line its edges, their shadows stretching long across the stones. A small group of oxen trudges past, pulling a cart loaded with amphorae, their hooves clopping in rhythmic sync. A few pigeons flutter lazily from a nearby cornice, cooing their ancient gossip. You pause to take it all in. Babylon's scale is overwhelming. Even the ruins of it, if this is truly what they looked like, would make modern cities blush. Everything feels deliberate, from the geometry of the streets to the way the light falls just so between the columns. The people move through it not with awe, but with ownership, as if to say, yes, we built this, and we're already thinking about something even grander. You walk toward the stairway that leads upward, toward the terraces that rumor calls hanging. The stones beneath your feet are wide and pale, worn smooth by centuries of footsteps. You run your hand along the railing, cool, slightly damp. Somewhere above, you can hear birds singing faintly, their voices carried down by the breeze. A young boy runs past you, carrying a basket of figs, his laughter echoing off the stone. He turns back briefly and grins, as if to say, hurry up, you're missing it. You smile back, though your stride remains unhurried. There's no rush here. This city has waited 26 centuries. It can wait a few more minutes for you to take the next step. As you climb, you pass an alcove carved into the wall, filled with small figurines, offerings to the gods of fertility and rain. Someone has placed a handful of fresh petals there, still damp with morning dew. You pause to admire the gesture. For a civilization often painted as stern and monumental, moments like this remind you how tender people could be, offering flowers to stone just in case the stone is listening. The air thickens slightly as you ascend, more humid now. You can feel it brushing your skin, like the faint exhale of a hidden forest waiting just beyond reach. The sound of trickling water grows stronger, mingling with the rustle of leaves. You glance upward and catch another glimpse of green, broad leaves moving gently in the breeze, their edges glowing in sunlight. It feels impossible, this lushness suspended above the desert. But then again, that's the thing about ancient Babylon. It was built on impossibilities. The city rose out of dust, irrigated by ingenuity and ruled by ambition. Why not add a mountain of gardens for good measure? You reach a landing halfway up the stairway and pause to catch your breath, not from exhaustion, but awe. From here, the view opens up across the city. The rooftops stretch in every direction, a sea of clay and stone. The Euphrates glimmers in the distance like a lazy silver ribbon, bending slowly toward the horizon. The morning haze makes everything look softer, almost unreal. You can almost hear the city breathing, the low hum of life below, the rustle of trees above, the endless dialogue between stone and wind. For a brief moment, time feels thin. You could be anywhere in any age. You take another step upward. The blue bricks of the Ishtar Gate gleam behind you in the sunlight, distant now, but still radiant. A promise kept by a city that refused to stay ordinary. Ahead, the path bends toward shadow, toward the promise of shade and water and wonder. And as you climb, the sound of a waterfall greets you, soft and deliberate, as if the gardens themselves are whispering a welcome. The stairs grow narrower as you climb, your hand brushing against the cool stone wall that now curves slightly inward. The temperature shifts again, less of that baked desert heat and more of something gentler, shaded, almost coastal. You can hear the steady pulse of water somewhere above you, rhythmic and sure, like the slow heartbeat of the gardens themselves. By the time you reach the top of the final step, your pace slows without you realizing it. You've arrived at the threshold of something extraordinary. A soft mist hangs in the air, sparkling faintly in the sunlight filtering through overhead vines. The first terrace stretches out before you, wide and layered, its edges blurred by an overgrowth of greenery. You take a step forward, and the sound of the city behind you fades into a distant hum. It's as if you've stepped through a doorway into another world entirely. The air is thick with life. Ferns spill over the stone balustrades like liquid emeralds. Vines climb columns that seem almost ancient enough to have grown there themselves. Palms sway lazily in the faint breeze, their fronds brushing against each other with a dry whisper. And there's that scent again, the impossible perfume of wet earth, fresh leaves, and something faintly sweet, like honey mixed with warm dust. Historians still argue whether these gardens were built on artificial terraces or natural hillsides. Some claim Nebuchadnezzar ordered massive brick vaults to hold up layer upon layer of soil. Others insist they were constructed like a step pyramid of greenery. Either way, the result must have looked exactly like this, a mountain of life rising from the desert floor. And as you stand there, surrounded by the soft rustle of leaves, it's hard to imagine any ancient traveler not gasping at the sight. You start walking, slowly, letting your feet find the rhythm of the path. Each step releases a faint puff of scent, the crushed leaves, the damp moss, the earthy musk of ancient stone sweating moisture. Somewhere nearby, water drips steadily, echoing off the stone in patient intervals. You can't see the source yet, but you know it's close. The sound feels deliberate, almost musical. You pass a cluster of broad-leafed plants with unfamiliar shapes, banana trees perhaps, or their ancient cousins. Their leaves shimmer with droplets that catch the sunlight, scattering it into tiny rainbows. A small lizard darts across the path and disappears into the undergrowth, its tiny feet leaving no trace on the damp stone. You smile. It seems even the wildlife has learned to tread softly here. A little further on, you find the edge of the terrace. Below you, the rest of Babylon stretches out in golden layers. The rooftops, the markets, the ziggurat of Marduk rising in the distance like a squared-off mountain. It all looks strangely peaceful from up here. The sounds of the city, donkeys, chatter, the clang of bronze reach you in soft, muffled fragments. Up here, everything feels suspended, quiet, safe. And yet, as you glance toward the upper terraces still hidden above, curiosity tugs at you. What kind of engineering could possibly make this oasis hang in midair? Some ancient accounts describe massive screws, powered by teams of workers or animals lifting water from the river below. It's an image that feels both magical and mechanical at once. But whether that's true or just ancient fan fiction, no one really knows. Historians still argue whether Babylon even had the tools to build such a system. A faint hum of movement draws your attention to the left. There, in a shallow alcove carved into the stone, a man in a linen tunic kneels beside a clay basin, washing his hands. He's one of the gardeners, you realize, the caretakers of this wonder. He notices you and smiles, then returns to his task. His hands move with practiced rhythm, gentle and sure. He scoops water from a narrow channel that runs along the path, carefully directing it toward a row of small potted plants. Herbs, perhaps, their scent faintly sharp, like mint and thyme. You watch him for a moment, marveling at the simplicity of it. Here, in a place that defies the desert itself, The magic isn't in grand gestures, it's in small acts of care. Someone, every day, tends to each leaf, each drop, each root. The gardens aren't just a monument to power, they're a monument to patience. A butterfly flutters past your shoulder, its wings an almost impossible blue. It lands briefly on the lip of the water channel before continuing its lazy path toward the vines above. You follow its motion upward and notice something curious. The stone ceiling of this terrace seems to drip, not from rain, but from a thin film of condensation. It gleams faintly in the sunlight, the result of cool stone meeting warm air. You can almost imagine ancient engineers calculating airflow and shade to maintain this perfect microclimate. Or maybe they just got lucky. Sometimes genius looks a lot like intuition. You keep walking, deeper into the greenery. The path narrows, flanked on both sides by low stone walls draped in creeping ivy. Occasionally, a small arch opens into another pocket of garden. A quiet nook where a bench of polished basalt waits beside a shallow pool. You take a seat on one of them. The stone is cool beneath you, the kind of coolness that seems to come from centuries of stillness. You sit for a while, just listening. The faint gurgle of water, the chirp of unseen birds, the whisper of leaves. Every sound feels intentional, like part of a larger symphony written for relaxation. You realize suddenly how quiet your own thoughts have become. That's what this place does. It replaces the noise in your head with something slower, older, calmer. From where you sit, you can see another gardener, a young woman this time, carrying a woven basket filled with small clay pots. She kneels to check the roots of a flowering shrub with yellow petals. Her movements are deliberate, reverent almost. When she finishes, she pours a handful of what looks like crushed charcoal into the soil and pats it gently. You remember reading somewhere that ancient gardeners used ash and crushed pottery to help water drain. You smile at the thought that even 3,000 years ago, people were inventing DIY hacks. You rise and follow the faint scent of fruit. It leads you toward the far corner of the terrace, where a cluster of fig trees stands in partial shade. Their branches twist elegantly, heavy with ripening fruit. A few have already fallen to the ground, their skins split open, revealing soft red pulp. You stoop and pick one up, feeling its weight. It's still warm from the sun. You don't eat it, of course, time travel etiquette and all, but you imagine the sweetness anyway, that sticky, honeyed flavor that would linger long after the last bite. You glance down again at the city below. From this vantage point, Babylon looks almost like a mosaic, each rooftop a tile in a vast living pattern. You wonder if Nebuchadnezzar ever stood here, watching his city glow under the same golden light, thinking he'd built something eternal. A breeze stirs, carrying with it a faint chorus of sounds from the terraces above. More water, more birds, perhaps even laughter. You can't tell if it's real or just the imagination of history whispering in your ear. Either way, it feels like an invitation. You take one last look at the terrace, the glistening leaves, the pools, the sense of calm, and step back onto the path leading upward. The next level awaits, higher, greener, closer to the sky. You place your hand on the rough stone railing, still damp from mist, and begin to climb again. Each step slow, deliberate, a meditation in motion. The air cools further, the scent of flowers deepens, and the murmur of water becomes a lullaby. It feels, for a fleeting moment, like you're ascending not just through a garden, but through time itself. Each terrace a memory, each leaf a fragment of something the world almost forgot. The next terrace opens like a revelation. You emerge from the narrow stairwell into sunlight, softened by 1,000 leaves. It's brighter up here, but not harsh. The light filters through trellises of vines that hang from carved beams overhead, dappling the ground in shifting patches of green and gold. You pause at the top of the stairs, letting your eyes adjust. The sound of trickling water surrounds you now, richer and more layered. Streams, fountains, and the gentle splash of water flowing between terraces. You've reached the true heart of the hanging gardens. The first thing you notice is how alive the air feels. It's thick with humidity, a kind of warmth that sticks to your skin but carries the promise of shade and growth. You take a slow breath, and it's like inhaling a story. The scent of damp soil, crushed leaves, and faint floral sweetness that drifts like incense through the air. Somewhere above, birds chatter softly, and their voices mingle with the whisper of vines brushing against each other. The terraces stretch out in a pattern of pathways and platforms, each layered with dense greenery. Palms, pomegranates, figs, and flowering shrubs, plants that shouldn't survive this far inland, thrive here, their roots buried in deep, rich soil that rests on carefully built stone foundations. You remember that ancient engineers supposedly created waterproof layers of reed, asphalt, and lead beneath the soil to keep the water from seeping away. Historians still argue whether that technology existed in Babylon's time, but standing here, surrounded by so much life, it's easy to believe it did. You take a few steps forward and run your fingers along a low wall covered in moss. The texture is cool and damp, the scent earthy and grounding. A small stream runs along the edge, carrying clear water over polished stones. Tiny fish dart in and out of the shallows, quick flashes of silver beneath the surface. You crouch down to watch them, their movements lazy and unhurried, creatures who've never known the idea of rush hour. Nearby, a cluster of broad leaves shifts, revealing a hidden corner filled with flowering vines. Their petals are pale blue and white, spiraling around wooden posts that reach toward the sky. The air hums with quiet insect life, a soft drone that feels almost musical. You smile at the thought that even here, among grand architecture and royal engineering, nature insists on being the main performer. You keep walking, following the sound of water. It leads you toward a small archway framed by hanging ivy. Beyond it lies a courtyard, circular, serene, and centered around a pool. The water there is perfectly still, mirroring the sky above. You can see the reflection of the terraces rising behind you, each level a layered canopy of green and gold. For a moment, you can't tell where the real gardens end and the mirrored ones begin. You step closer, and the faint scent of flowers intensifies, jasmine perhaps, or something like it. The pool's edge is lined with stone planters filled with lilies, their broad leaves floating on the surface like green plates. A dragonfly hovers briefly before dipping low, touching the water and vanishing into sunlight. You can imagine it now. The royal family strolling here, attendants fanning them gently, while poets recited verses about the generosity of their king. It's said that Nebuchadnezzar built these gardens for his wife, Queen Amadis of Media, to remind her of the green mountains of her homeland. Historians still argue whether she was real or mythic, but the story feels true in spirit. You can feel the love, or at least the longing, in the design itself. This isn't a monument to conquest, it's a gift of comfort. A gentle laugh draws your attention to the other side of the courtyard. Two gardeners stand there discussing something in low tones as they adjust a set of clay pipes. One of them tilts a lever and water begins to flow from an upper terrace, spilling down in a thin, graceful ribbon into the pool below. The sound it makes is soft, like fabric brushing against stone. They seem pleased with their work, nodding to each other before moving on. You wonder if they realize that thousands of years later, people would still be imagining their handiwork in awe. You find a shaded bench beneath a palm and sit down. The stone is warm, but the air around it is cool from the nearby water. You lean back and close your eyes for a moment, just listening. The rhythm of the water feels hypnotic, steady and circular, like a lullaby written by engineers. You can almost feel your pulse syncing with it. A thought crosses your mind. How strange it must have been for ancient visitors to see this oasis rising out of the desert. Some historians believe that travelers from Greece and Persia were so stunned by the sight that they couldn't resist exaggerating the stories when they returned home. Maybe the gardens weren't hanging at all, but the idea of terraced greenery so high above ground seemed miraculous enough to warrant a little poetic inflation. You can imagine one of those travelers gesturing wildly to his friends, saying, "You wouldn't believe what I saw! Trees in the sky!"
Still, even if the stories were stretched, there's no denying that this place feels like a dream turned tangible. Every sound, every movement seems designed to soothe. The gurgle of water, the hum of insects, the rustle of palms overhead. Even the occasional creak of wood from the irrigation system fits into the rhythm, like percussion in a lazy symphony.
You rise again, stretching slightly, and wander toward the edge of the terrace. A row of cypress trees stands guard along the boundary, their tall, slender forms cutting elegant silhouettes against the hazy skyline. Between their trunks, you can see the Euphrates glinting in the distance. The river seems smaller from up here, but its importance is immense. Without it, none of this could exist. You remember that the gardens supposedly drew water directly from the river below, lifted by an intricate network of pulleys, buckets, or screws. Whether that system actually existed or was later imagined, it's still one of history's most beautiful maybes. As you look out, a warm wind drifts through the trees, carrying with it a hint of spice, cinnamon perhaps, or myrrh. Someone nearby must be burning it in a brazier. The scent mingles with the flowers and soil, and suddenly you feel like you could stay here forever. You notice a small alcove built into the stone wall, half hidden behind vines. Inside sits a statue, a woman carved in pale limestone, her face serene, eyes closed. Her hands cradle a pot from which water slowly spills, endlessly replenishing itself. You realize she must represent Ishtar, or perhaps some local river deity. Her presence feels gentle, protective. A few fresh petals have been placed at her feet, and one tiny clay lamp burns nearby, its flame flickering like a heartbeat. Even here, amid all this grandeur, humans still leave offerings to keep the magic going, just in case. You murmur a quiet thanks to the statue, not out of belief exactly, but out of respect for everyone who ever did. You continue wandering until you find another stairway leading upward, narrower than the last. It winds between thick clusters of plants, their leaves brushing against your arms as you pass. Water seeps along the edges, glistening in the sunlight that filters through the canopy. The stairs seem to climb into mist. Halfway up, you pause to look back. The terraces below ripple in layers of green, each one alive with light and sound. The city beyond glows softly in the sun, its edges blurred by the heat. You can just make out the Ishtar Gate in the distance, still shining like a sapphire jewel against the desert. You smile, realizing that the journey has barely begun. There are more levels, more secrets, more soft mysteries waiting above. You grip the stone railing, still slick with water, and take another step. The sound of a waterfall greets you once again, closer now, louder, but still soothing. It's the sound of an ancient heartbeat that never quite stopped. The stairs open onto the next terrace with a burst of sound and scent so vivid it feels like stepping into another world. The first thing you hear is the waterfall itself, no longer a whisper or trickle, but a rushing cascade tumbling from a stone aqueduct above you. The water pours into a long channel that winds through the terrace like a silver ribbon, its edges lined with terracotta planters overflowing with herbs and flowers. You stand there for a moment, letting the mist cool your skin. It clings to your arms, tiny droplets glittering in the sunlight. You can almost taste the freshness in the air, a mix of mineral tang and sweet floral perfume. The sound is constant but not overwhelming. It has rhythm, a pulse that seems to slow your heartbeat to match it.
You follow the stream as it curves through the garden. Each bend reveals a new collection of plants. Lavender-like shrubs with silvery leaves, tall reeds swaying gently beside papyrus, and delicate clusters of blooms that look like stars scattered across green velvet. The ancient Babylonians, you recall, were known for their love of ornamentation and fragrance. They didn't just grow plants for food or medicine, but for beauty and pleasure. A fun little fact floats into your mind. Ancient gardeners sometimes used crocodile dung mixed with mud as a natural fertilizer. You glance at the lush greenery around you and can't help but think, well, whatever works. Historians still argue whether Babylonian horticulture borrowed more from Egyptian or Persian traditions, but it's clear they mastered the art of making nature obey the human imagination. As you move deeper into the terrace, the sound of the waterfall fades behind you, replaced by softer noises, the chirp of unseen birds, the hum of bees, and the faint creak of wooden wheels turning somewhere above. The scent of herbs intensifies, mint, basil, maybe a hint of coriander, and it feels familiar, comforting, like a kitchen garden on a lazy afternoon. You stop at a shaded pergola draped with vines. Beneath it stands a long stone table where a few clay pots sit half buried in soil. You crouch to inspect them. The pots are wide and rounded, with small holes at the base. Ancient irrigation devices, perhaps. You remember reading that Babylonian gardeners used something called olas, porous clay jars that slowly released water into the soil. A low-tech, high-efficiency miracle that modern gardeners still use. You can't help but smile. Sometimes the past really did think ahead. You continue walking until the path opens into a small orchard. Fruit trees rise from the terrace floor, their branches heavy with figs, dates, and pomegranates. You reach out and touch one of the pomegranates. It's firm, warm from the sun. The color is deep red, almost metallic. You think of the ancient myths surrounding the fruit, symbols of fertility, wealth, and the afterlife. Maybe this garden wasn't just about greenery after all. Maybe it was meant to echo paradise itself. You take a seat on a low wall beneath one of the trees. The air is filled with the soft buzz of life. Somewhere nearby, a gardener is singing under his breath, a simple, repetitive tune that drifts between the leaves. It's not loud enough to catch the words, but the melody carries peace. You close your eyes and let it blend with the rustling of branches. After a while, curiosity nudges you onward again. You follow another channel of water, this one narrower, trickling gently between flagstones. The stones are damp beneath your feet, their edges worn smooth by centuries of footsteps. Occasionally, you spot inscriptions carved faintly into the surface, symbols perhaps, or just decorative lines that mimic waves. You pause beside a large tree whose roots spill over the terrace wall like frozen streams. The bark is rough and deeply grooved, and the leaves shimmer pale green in the sun. You remember hearing that date palms were sacred in Mesopotamia, often used as a metaphor for life and endurance. Their trunks even inspired the columns in later temples. Historians still argue whether the Hanging Gardens trees were native imports or exotic specimens brought from far-off lands. But standing beneath this one, you realize it doesn't matter. Whatever grew here was chosen to last. From this vantage point, you can see the terrace below. Tiny streams, pools, clusters of flowers, and beyond that, the rooftops of Babylon. The city sprawls endlessly, a patchwork of clay and color, shimmering in the desert heat. You catch a glimpse of movement, people on the streets, merchants at their stalls, children chasing each other through alleys. Life hums below, while up here, time stretches like honey. You lean on the railing and watch as a pair of doves land nearby. They peck at the damp stones, tilting their heads curiously before fluttering away toward the trees. One feather drifts down and lands near your feet, a soft, white curl against the stone. You pick it up and twirl it between your fingers,
thinking about all the other creatures that might have called this garden home. Lizards, songbirds, even the occasional monkey brought in from foreign lands for amusement. The kings of Babylon, it seems, wanted to build not just a garden, but a world. You start to climb again, following a new path that winds upward through patches of ferns and flowering vines. The air grows cooler the higher you go. The hum of insects fades into the steady splash of another water source. You realize you're nearing the top of the irrigation system, the very heart of the garden's mystery. According to some theories, this was where the legendary Archimedean screw, or a similar device, lifted water from the Euphrates below. You picture it now, a spiral of wood and metal turning endlessly, raising water through its coils with each rotation. Historians still argue whether that technology existed here or was invented centuries later, but imagining it feels right. After all, these gardens weren't built by ordinary means. They were a defiance of nature itself, a declaration that even in a desert, life would bloom. You pass a set of columns carved with reliefs, scenes of workers tending plants, carrying buckets, and harvesting fruit. The carvings are faint but expressive. You trace one with your fingertip, feeling the groove of a hand chiseled thousands of years ago. The figures seem to move beneath your touch, alive in their perpetual labor. A light breeze brushes your face, carrying the scent of rain, though the sky above remains perfectly blue. The mist from the waterfalls must have thickened into a soft haze. You walk into it, and the world blurs around you. The plants take on dreamlike shapes. The air feels thick enough to touch. You move slowly, savoring every sound. The drip of water, the sigh of leaves, the faint, rhythmic creak of wooden gears somewhere beyond sight. Then, just as you start to wonder if the mist will swallow everything, the haze thins and you step out into sunlight again. Before you stretches another breathtaking view, a terrace so wide it feels like a meadow in the sky. The waterfall feeds into a large pool at the center, and from that pool, smaller streams branch outward like veins. Around it grow clusters of lilies, papyrus, and lotus blossoms, plants sacred in ancient symbolism, thriving side by side. You take it all in slowly, realizing that each level you've climbed tells a different story. From simple herbs to towering trees, from practicality to pure poetry. The hanging gardens, you think, aren't just one place. They're an idea unfolding upward, one terrace at a time. You laugh softly, thinking about how somewhere, far below, someone might be arguing whether the gardens ever existed at all. And here you are, walking among them, feet damp from their water, surrounded by their quiet music. If that's not proof enough, what is? You linger by the pool, watching ripples chase each other across the surface. Sunlight glitters on the water, scattering golden reflections across the leaves. The effect is mesmerizing, almost hypnotic. You lean against a stone column, exhaling deeply, feeling the warmth seep into your skin. Maybe the true purpose of this place was never to impress foreign envoys or please a homesick queen. Maybe it was meant for this, for the quiet moments when you stand still, surrounded by life. And remember that even in the harshest places, beauty finds a way to grow. You take one last look at the pool before turning toward the path that leads higher still. The sound of rushing water follows you, steady and patient, as if urging you onward. There's more to see, more to understand, more serenity to gather before the day fades. And so, you climb again, slowly, calmly, as the hanging gardens rise around you like a dream that refuses to end. You ascend the narrow steps once again, feeling the soft spray of water cooling your neck as you climb. The higher you go, the more the sound of the city below dissolves into a quiet murmur, just wind, leaves, and the rhythmic slosh of irrigation channels. When you finally reach the next terrace, the air feels different, lighter, fresher.
You've entered a new world in miniature.
The terrace opens into a wide, sunlit expanse framed by pillars of pale stone. Between them stretch canopies of woven reeds, filtering the light into soft stripes that dance across the ground. A wide pathway of glazed brick runs through the center, glimmering faintly under your feet. You pause just to look. Here, the architecture itself feels more deliberate, less wild jungle, more curated harmony. You can almost sense the king's vision guiding this level, where nature and craftsmanship meet in quiet conversation.
The first thing that draws your attention is the scent. Not floral this time, but sweet and spiced, like cinnamon mixed with honey. You follow it and discover a row of low shrubs bearing clusters of tiny golden flowers. Bees drift lazily among them, their hum a steady background drone. The scent grows stronger as you pass, almost edible. You find yourself wondering if this was where they grew saffron or perhaps aromatic resins used in temples. A little further on, you find a shaded platform overlooking the terraces below. It's bordered by columns carved with spirals and floral motifs, ancient symbols of fertility and abundance. You lean on the railing and gaze downward. The gardens spread beneath you in rippling layers of green, interrupted only by flashes of blue water and terracotta tile. It's breathtaking, and yet it feels strangely quiet, as if even the wind moves gently out of respect. You hear footsteps behind you and turn. A figure approaches, another gardener, carrying a bundle of reeds over one shoulder. He nods politely as he passes, the sunlight glinting off the copper clasp on his belt. You watch as he kneels beside a pool and begins repairing one of the channels, his movements careful and practiced. You can tell this is daily work, not ceremony. The calm efficiency of someone who knows exactly how to keep paradise from falling apart. You crouch to watch him for a moment, fascinated by the irrigation system. Water moves through clay pipes laid under the stone, feeding small fountains and channels that snake across the terrace. You can see where the channels narrow and widen, perfectly measured to balance the flow. You think of how precise this must have been, the calculations, the craftsmanship. Historians still argue whether the Babylonians had the engineering skill for such feats, but one look at the working system before you answers that question. Of course they did. You rise and continue walking, tracing the path of the water. It leads you to a small pavilion, open on all sides, where vines trail down from the roof in long curtains. Inside, a shallow pool mirrors the blue sky above. The surface is dotted with pink lotus blossoms. You kneel beside it and watch as a breeze ripples the reflection, breaking the clouds into fragments of white. This might have been a place of meditation, or maybe just a retreat from the heat. You can imagine a queen sitting here, dipping her fingers into the cool water, surrounded by attendants fanning her gently with palm leaves. You smile at the image, then at the thought that even royalty needed shade and silence sometimes. As you stand to leave, your eye catches something carved into the stone near the pool. It's faint, half eroded, but still recognizable. A small spiral symbol, looping inward endlessly. You run your fingertip along it. Perhaps it's decorative, or maybe a signature left by the artisans who built this terrace. Or maybe, just maybe, it's something older, a mark of devotion to a forgotten god of growth or water. Historians still argue whether such symbols had meaning or were simply artistic flourishes. But either way, it adds a whisper of mystery to the space. A few steps later, you pass a series of planters filled with strange plants, broad leaves with glossy surfaces, their undersides tinged red. One of them catches your sleeve as you walk by, leaving a faint, sticky residue on the fabric. You sniff it and laugh softly. It smells faintly of sugar. Ancient gardens apparently came with built-in snacks. You take a detour along a shaded corridor lined with columns. Between each pair, a curtain of vines sways gently, forming living walls. As you walk, the air cools further, the light dimming to a soft green. It's peaceful here, so peaceful that your footsteps sound almost intrusive. You lower your pace to a lazy shuffle, matching the rhythm of the leaves rustling overhead. In the half-light, you spot another statue, half hidden among the vines. This one depicts a lion, its mouth open in a perpetual roar, though moss has softened its features. You brush a few leaves away and discover a small trickle of water flowing from the lion's mouth into a shallow basin below. It's a fountain, cleverly disguised as sculpture. You grin, realizing the Babylonians had a sense of humor too. Ferocity tamed into function. You lean closer to drink from the basin. The water is surprisingly cool and tastes faintly of minerals. It refreshes you instantly. As you stand back, droplets slide down your chin, catching the light like tiny crystals. You chuckle softly to yourself. If bottled water companies ever find a way to brand Hanging Gardens Edition, they'd make a fortune. The path opens up again, revealing a garden bed shaped in a perfect spiral. The outer edge holds low herbs, thyme, mint, and chamomile, while the inner circles rise with taller plants, culminating in a central palm tree. The design feels intentional, a kind of natural mandala. You step into it carefully, following the curve inward. Each plant releases a subtle scent as you brush past, fresh, soothing, layered. By the time you reach the center, the air feels heavy with calm. You sit at the base of the palm, leaning your back against the trunk. Its bark is rough but solid, grounding. Above you, the fronds sway lazily against a bright blue sky. You close your eyes for a moment, and the sounds blend together. The bees, the distant waterfall, the whisper of leaves. It's the kind of silence that isn't empty, but full of gentle motion. Your thoughts wander to the gardeners, the engineers, the dreamers who built this place, to the hands that planted, watered, and tended each leaf, to the thousands of quiet moments like this that must have unfolded here across centuries. You wonder if they ever thought about the future, if they imagined that one day their garden would be remembered not for its survival, but for the myth it became. Historians still argue whether the Hanging Gardens ever truly stood in Babylon at all. Some say they were in Nineveh, built by a completely different king. Others insist they existed only in the imagination of Greek travelers. But sitting here, surrounded by sound and scent and light, you know one thing for certain. Real or not, they feel alive. You pluck a small leaf from the ground and twirl it between your fingers. The texture is soft, almost waxy. You think of how fragile plants are, yet how persistent. Even in legend, they keep growing, curling their roots into every retelling, sprouting in the cracks of doubt and time. You take a slow breath. The air feels thick and gentle, like warm silk against your skin. The scent of mint drifts closer as the wind shifts, and somewhere nearby, water splashes lightly against stone. The whole terrace seems to breathe with you. You rise, brushing dust from your clothes, and glance up toward the next stairway. It waits at the far end of the terrace, bathed in golden light. Another level, another view, another piece of this eternal dream waiting to unfold. You smile softly, your voice almost a whisper as you murmur to yourself, "All right, Babylon. Let's see what else you're hiding." Then you begin to climb once more, your footsteps slow and steady, each one echoing softly between the pillars as the Hanging Gardens rise higher around you, layer by layer toward the clouds. The next flight of stairs feels steeper, narrower, and more winding, almost like the garden is testing your patience before revealing its next secret. The air changes as you climb. It carries a cool dampness that smells faintly of clay and rain. When you finally step onto the terrace above, you pause, not from exhaustion, but from quiet wonder. This level is different. Gone are the open courtyards and organized walkways. Here, the greenery grows wilder, almost jungle-like. Vines twist across the columns, and broad-leafed plants crowd the paths, brushing against your legs as you walk. The air feels thick, heavy with moisture and scent. Earth, moss, and something citrusy that tingles at the edge of your senses. You take a few steps forward, your sandals squelching softly against the damp stone. To your left, a narrow stream trickles from an upper terrace, winding between thick ferns before vanishing beneath a cluster of rocks. The sound it makes is irregular but soothing, like a lazy drummer tapping on hollow bamboo. You pause to watch a frog leap across the path and disappear into the greenery. You smile. Apparently, even in one of the 7 wonders of the world, frogs still do their thing. You notice that the light here has changed too. The dense canopy filters the sun into patches of shifting gold. Dust motes and bits of pollen drift lazily through the air, glowing whenever a ray of light catches them. Everything seems to move in slow motion. You exhale, and even your breath feels like it lingers too long, unwilling to leave. As you make your way deeper into this level, you come across something unexpected, a small wooden bridge arching over a stream. The wood is dark and glossy, polished smooth by years of use. You step onto it, and it creaks faintly under your weight. Below, the water moves sluggishly, reflecting the green of the plants above. Tiny silver fish dart just beneath the surface. You lean over, trying to count them, but give up after a few seconds when you realize they're far too quick and far too smug about it. Halfway across the bridge, you pause to look out at the garden around you. You can see palms rising in clusters, their fronds spreading wide like giant fans. Beneath them grow shorter trees, maybe citrons or figs, with fruits hanging low enough to brush your shoulder. Their scent mixes with the damp earth and the faint sweetness of blooming flowers. You remember something you once read, that Babylonian royalty imported exotic plants from across their empire. Some may have come from as far as India or the Arabian Peninsula. Historians still argue whether that's true, but standing here, surrounded by species that clearly don't belong in the desert, you can't help but believe it. You cross the bridge and find yourself in a shaded glen where the air feels cooler still. The sound of running water grows stronger, and soon you find its source, a waterfall cascading from a carved stone lion's mouth, splashing into a small pond below. Around the pond, flowering plants bloom in a riot of color, purple, white, deep crimson. A few butterflies flit lazily between them, their wings catching the light like shards of stained glass. You kneel beside the pond and trail your fingers through the water. It's cold, startlingly so. Ripples spread outward, warping the reflection of the trees above. For a moment, you think you see movement below the surface, something large, just out of sight. But when you blink, it's gone. Maybe just a trick of the light. Or maybe the ancient Babylonians had a pet fish that achieved legendary size. You chuckle softly at the thought. The carp of Babylon. That's a bedtime story waiting to happen. A small stone bench sits nearby, half hidden under vines. You sit down, the surface cool and slightly damp. From here, you can see how the terrace subtly slopes inward, guiding water toward the pond. It's brilliant engineering disguised as effortless beauty. Every drop of water that falls here seems to know exactly where it's supposed to go. You lean back, staring up at the canopy. The trees above sway gently, their branches intertwining like fingers. The pattern of light and shadow dances across your face, hypnotic and steady. You find yourself breathing in rhythm with it. Slow in, slow out. The air smells alive. Somewhere off to your right, you hear soft laughter. Not loud, just a faint echo, like a memory lingering in the leaves. You turn, but there's no one there. Maybe it's the sound of water bouncing between stone walls, or maybe it's something older, a whisper left behind by people who once walked these paths. The hanging gardens, after all, weren't just about plants. They were a sanctuary,
a place for stories and music and human presence.
You rise and follow the laughter's direction anyway, weaving through the dense greenery until the path opens into a circular clearing. In the center stands a marble platform surrounded by low pillars, each carved with reliefs of musicians playing lutes, drums, and flutes. It must have been a small performance space hidden deep within the gardens. You can almost picture it. A quiet evening, lanterns swaying from the trees, the scent of jasmine thick in the air, soft music drifting between the terraces.
You sit on the edge of the platform and close your eyes, trying to imagine the sound. A flute begins, slow, delicate. Then the soft beat of a drum joins in, steady and heartbeat-like. The melody builds gently, wrapping around the rush of water and the rustle of leaves. Even in your imagination, it's beautiful. You catch yourself swaying slightly, eyes still closed. When you open them again, the terrace looks different. The sunlight has shifted, casting everything in amber hues. The shadows stretch long, and the air feels cooler. The faint hum of insects rises, blending with the trickle of water into something almost musical. You realize this is how it must have felt in the evenings, when the heat finally softened and the city below glowed orange in the setting sun. You walk slowly around the clearing, fingers brushing against the carved musicians. The details are astonishing. Each strand of hair, each fold of fabric captured in stone. One figure holds a small drum tucked under his arm, a faint smile carved onto his face. You notice that one of his fingers is missing, worn away by time. You grin quietly. Even stone drummers, it seems, lose a beat or two after a few thousand years. You continue exploring, the path winding back into dense vegetation. You pass a patch of tall reeds swaying beside another stream. The air smells faintly metallic now, iron in the water maybe. A dragonfly zips past your face, catching the light as it goes. You watch it disappear and feel a flicker of gratitude for how alive this place is, how every inch seems to breathe. Further along, you come upon a small domed structure built into the terrace wall. Its entrance is low, half concealed by hanging ivy. You duck inside. The air within is cool and still, a relief after the humidity outside. The interior glows faintly, lit by narrow shafts of sunlight filtering through slits in the dome. The walls are covered with faded murals, images of mountains, rivers, and forests. A depiction, perhaps, of the homeland Queen Amidis once missed. You trace one of the painted peaks with your fingertip. The paint feels chalky, but somehow warm. You imagine her sitting here centuries ago, looking at these same walls, letting the memories of distant landscapes soothe her homesickness. Historians still argue whether she ever truly existed, but her longing feels real enough to echo through every leaf and stone. You step back outside, blinking as sunlight floods your vision again. The air feels warmer now, touched with gold. Somewhere below, the waterfall continues its endless song, soft and steady. You take a deep breath, feeling the rhythm of the place seep into your bones. The path ahead slopes gently upward again, disappearing behind a curtain of greenery. You can see glimpses of light through it, brighter, whiter. The next level is waiting, shimmering faintly through the leaves, like a dream half remembered. You take one last look at the pond, the bridge, the carved musicians, all the fragments of peace this terrace holds, and whisper, "You've aged well, Babylon." Then you start to climb again, one step at a time, the sound of running water and soft music following you upward like the fading echo of an ancient lullaby. The final ascent begins quietly. The steps are narrower here, their edges worn smooth by time and perhaps by the footsteps of dreamers long gone. The air grows lighter as you climb, touched by a faint breeze that carries with it a whisper of jasmine and sun-warmed stone. Your hand brushes the moss-covered wall beside you, still damp from the terraces below. And for a moment, you think you can feel the heartbeat of the place. Slow, steady, ancient. When you reach the top, the space opens suddenly, like stepping into the sky itself. The final terrace stretches out before you, broad, sunlit, and impossibly serene. The hum of water is still there, but softer now, as if the sound has thinned with altitude. The view alone stops you in your tracks. From here, you can see the entire city of Babylon unfurled below, a living mosaic of clay rooftops, market squares, and distant temple spires glinting in the afternoon light. Beyond the city, the Euphrates River winds like a ribbon of silver through the desert, its banks lined with date palms that sway gently in the wind. The air feels different here, cleaner, freer. You breathe deeply, and the warmth of the sun seeps into your skin. You realize you've reached not just the top of the gardens, but the heart of what they were meant to be, a place of harmony between earth, water, and sky. The layout of this terrace is simpler than the ones below, almost minimalist. A broad reflecting pool lies at its center, its surface perfectly still except for the faint ripples made by a drifting pedal. The pool mirrors the blue of the sky so precisely that it feels as though you could step forward and fall upward into it. Around the pool, small flowering shrubs bloom in symmetrical clusters, oleanders, irises, and delicate white lilies that seem to glow in the light. You walk toward the pool, your footsteps echoing softly against the smooth stone. The reflection of the sky trembles with each step, as though reacting to your presence. You kneel by the edge and dip your fingers in. The water is cool, the kind of coolness that seems to travel straight through your hand into your chest. For a long moment, you simply stay there, letting your reflection blur with the shimmering blue. You think about all the terraces you've passed, the hanging vines, the whispering fountains, the secret corners where stories still hum beneath the leaves. Each level felt like a world of its own, yet all of them led here, to this open, quiet expanse where everything meets. A light wind ripples through the air, and with it comes the faint chiming of bells. You look up and see small bronze bells hanging from wooden beams above the terrace, their surfaces green with age. Each time the breeze stirs, they release a soft, uneven music, not quite melody, but something gentler, like breath turned into sound. The ancients must have hung them here to make the wind visible, to give it voice. You smile at the thought. You rise and walk slowly along the terrace edge. From this height, the other terraces cascade downward in layers of green and stone, their patterns clear for the first time. You can see the engineered symmetry, the way each level channels water to the next, the way sunlight filters perfectly across the tiers. What once seemed like wild beauty now reveals itself as deliberate design, an orchestration of chaos and control, art and architecture intertwined. As you trace the outer wall, your eyes fall on something curious, a small stone altar near the northern edge, half hidden beneath a flowering vine. You approach it. The surface bears faint carvings, a sun, a pair of hands, and lines of cuneiform script so weathered they're barely legible. You run your fingers across them, feeling their grooves. You can't read the words, but you can imagine what they might have meant. A prayer, perhaps, to the gods of fertility and rain? Or maybe an inscription dedicating this place to the queen who inspired it, Amethyst, the woman who missed her mountains. You stand there for a while, your hands still resting on the stone, and think about how love and longing might have built this wonder. Not just royal ambition or engineering brilliance, but the simple human ache for home, for something green and alive amid endless sand. You wonder if that's why this place feels so strangely familiar, even across millennia. Every human heart, in some quiet way, understands the need to build beauty against desolation. You turn away from the altar and notice a narrow pathway leading toward the far corner of the terrace.
It's lined with low hedges and ends at a small pavilion, a circular structure supported by slender columns. Its roof, once tiled, now bears the soft green of moss and small wildflowers. You make your way toward it, the ground warm under your feet. Inside, the pavilion is open and filled with light. At its center stands a single stone seat, not a throne, not quite, more like a bench carved with delicate patterns of vines and stars. You sit down, and instantly the sounds of the world seem to recede. The wind softens, the distant city hum fades, and even the rustle of leaves quiets. All that remains is the slow trickle of water from somewhere nearby, the heartbeat of the gardens themselves. From this spot, the view is breathtaking. You can see the Euphrates shimmer in the distance, the desert stretching beyond it in pale gold waves. You can see the ziggurat of Marduk rising like a stairway to the heavens, its blue-glazed bricks glowing in the light. And above all of it, the sky, vast, pale, endless. You imagine what it must have felt like to sit here in ancient times, to look out over a living city, to hear music drifting up from the terraces below, to feel the coolness of the stone against your skin while the air shimmered with heat. You imagine King Nebuchadnezzar himself sitting here, gazing toward the horizon, perhaps thinking of the wife for whom he built it all. You picture her beside him, eyes closed, listening to the sound of the water, pretending that the distant desert hills were the mountains of Media. You rest your elbows on your knees and watch as a cloud passes overhead, its shadow gliding gently across the pool below. The light shifts, cooler, softer, and for a brief moment, everything seems suspended. The bells chime again, this time in harmony with a faint echo from below. It's as if the entire structure, from its foundations to this highest terrace, is breathing in unison. Time becomes slippery. You lose track of how long you sit there, watching the light move, listening to the rhythm of the place. The sun begins to lower, turning the sky a gentle amber. The reflection pool glows like molten gold, and long shadows stretch across the terrace. The bell's song deepens, slower now, echoing through the stone like the closing of a day. As the light fades, you rise from the stone seat and walk once more to the terrace edge. The city below flickers with new light, torches, fires, lanterns. Babylon begins to glow like a constellation resting on the earth. The river reflects the firelight, and for a heartbeat, it looks like the sky has folded downward, joining earth and heaven in one luminous dream. You realize then what the gardens truly are, not just a monument or a marvel, but a bridge between elements. Water drawn upward, sky reflected downward, earth rising toward heaven. A meditation in architecture, a lullaby made of stone and green. You linger for a few moments more, then turn toward the stairs. The path downward is bathed in the soft light of dusk. The vines shimmer faintly in the fading glow, and the air feels cooler now, full of that quiet stillness that comes just before night. As you take the first step down, you look back one last time at the pool, the pavilion, and the endless blue sky now deepening into violet. You whisper, almost to yourself, "Even the ancient knew how to dream." The breeze answers with the faint chime of a bell. And with that sound, soft, slow, and fading, you begin your descent, carrying with you the peace of the hanging gardens, their stories folded gently into the rhythm of your breath. You descend the final stairway from the upper terrace, and the sounds change. The whispering wind gives way to the soft burble of water. The air grows heavier, cooler, scented with damp stone and green leaves. You follow the sound until it opens before you. A wide, reflective basin, calm as glass, cradled between low walls of pale limestone. This, you realize, is the garden's heart. The basin stretches out like a mirror to the sky, rimmed with clay tiles painted in faded blues and ochres. Water lilies float lazily on the surface, their petals half open as though mid-yawn. A small fountain in the center sends up a thin, steady stream, and the droplets sparkle in the fading light before falling again with a soft, rhythmic sound, like the sigh of the place itself. You walk along the edge of the pool, your reflection keeping pace beside you. The cool stone under your feet still holds the memory of sunlight, radiating warmth that lingers just enough to comfort but not to sting. You crouch down, reach out, and trail your fingers through the water. The ripples move outward, distorting the reflected sky until the clouds seem to ripple too. The sensation is grounding. Water against skin, sound against silence, history against imagination. You take a deep breath, and the air smells faintly of wet reeds, clay, and something floral that you can't quite name. Maybe myrtle, maybe something extinct. As you lift your gaze, you notice something stirring beneath the water, faint flashes of color, like moving jewels. Carp, long and elegant, swim just below the surface, their scales catching the light in flashes of gold and orange. You watch as they glide in slow, deliberate circles, unbothered by your presence. They've likely been gliding like that for generations, descendants of fish brought from the river and pampered in royal ponds. The Babylonians were known to breed ornamental fish, though whether for beauty or for dinner remains a matter historians still argue about. You silently hope it's the former. You stand and follow the curve of the pool until you reach a shaded area where stone benches rest under a canopy of vines. It's the kind of spot meant for quiet thoughts, or perhaps for avoiding royal duties under the pretense of contemplation. You sit down and lean back, the rough stone cool against your shoulders. From here, you can see the reflection of the terraces above, each level mirrored on the water's surface, like Babylon itself is gazing down into its own dream. Somewhere nearby, a musician plucks at the strings of a lyre, the notes slow, wandering, like a song that never quite begins or ends. The sound drifts through the garden, carried by the same breeze that moves the vines above you. You can almost picture him, sitting cross-legged on a low stool, half hidden by the foliage, lost in a tune that's older than language itself. The tune draws your eyes toward the far side of the pool, where a group of gardeners is at work. Their linen garments are loose and pale, their heads wrapped against the sun. You watch as they carry clay pots, prune branches, and adjust small channels that guide water to the plant roots. They move with an easy rhythm, a choreography of habit and patience. You notice one of them holding a curved bronze tool, part spade, part knife. With deft, slow motions, he trims the edges of a flower bed, shaping it into a perfect curve. It's mesmerizing to watch. No rush, no hesitation, just the quiet confidence of someone who's done this 1,000 times before. These gardeners, you realize, are the unsung artists of Babylon. While kings and scribes got the glory, these people kept the gardens alive, tending the living heart of the empire. Ancient records even mention specific titles for such workers: keepers of the green, tenders of roots. It's said they used a special mixture of river silt and crushed reeds as fertilizer, a technique modern botanists still find surprisingly effective. And somewhere in this tranquil scene, you can almost sense their pride, the satisfaction of coaxing paradise out of desert dust. A dragonfly darts past, its wings catching the light like shards of glass. You track its erratic path as it hovers, dips, and finally settles on a reed by the pool's edge. The garden feels alive in small, deliberate ways. Every ripple, every rustle, every glimmer of light carefully orchestrated by nature and human hands alike. You lean forward, elbows on knees, and stare into the pool again. The fish drift lazily, the fountain continues its soft, hypnotic rhythm, and the faint music fades into something almost like silence. You begin to feel the edges of your thoughts soften, your mind quieting as the scene absorbs you. For a moment, you wonder how the ancient visitors experienced this place. Did they sit here too, watching the water shimmer in the heat? Did they think of gods and kingdoms, or simply the next meal, the next day, the next quiet moment like this one? The kings might have built the gardens to impress, but perhaps the greatest gift they gave was stillness. You close your eyes for a second, just listening. The soundscape is exquisite. The low hum of insects, the gurgle of water, the faint rustle of leaves. Somewhere in the distance, a woman's laughter echoes briefly, quick and bright, then gone. It makes the place feel lived in, not frozen in time. When you open your eyes again, the sun has shifted. Long streaks of gold play across the surface of the pool, turning it into a sheet of molten bronze. The carp glide through it like moving constellations. A pair of birds, maybe doves, land near the fountain, dipping their beaks delicately into the spray. You can see tiny droplets glint on their feathers before they flutter off again, leaving soft ripples behind. You rise and stretch, your body moving slowly, lazily, as if afraid to disturb the calm. The bench has left faint impressions on your skin, like the garden's way of marking time. You begin to walk again, circling the pool once more, letting your fingers brush over the warm stone railing. The air is thicker now, carrying that sweet, heavy scent that clings just before dusk. You spot a cluster of lotus blossoms near the water's edge. One of them is just beginning to close, its petals folding inward in a slow, sleepy gesture. It reminds you of eyelids, heavy with drowsiness, the natural rhythm of rest built even into flowers. You smile because it feels appropriate. You're in a garden built for peace, after all, not conquest. The light begins to soften further. The water now mirrors a sky tinged with rose and amber. The city beyond is starting to blur into the horizon, the edges of towers melting into haze. From somewhere beyond the terraces comes the faint scent of burning incense, sandalwood perhaps, mingled with the savory smell of cooking. Life continues beyond the calm, but here it feels far away. You find yourself whispering, without meaning to, "They really did it." You're not sure who they are, engineers, kings, dreamers, but somehow they captured something fragile and timeless and made it last this long. Maybe not in brick and water, but in imagination. You take one last look at the pool before moving on. The reflection stares back. The terraces stacked high above you, the open sky beyond, the drifting fish below. It's a complete picture. Sky, earth, and water fused together in perfect balance. You step away slowly, the soles of your feet making soft sounds against the stone. Behind you, the ripples from your touch finally fade, and the surface returns to stillness. The last light of the sun glints across the water one final time, a quiet promise of rest, shimmering and brief. Somewhere in the distance, the lyre starts again, its melody looping back, as if to remind you, everything in the gardens moves in cycles, the light, the water, even the dreams. You smile and keep walking, following the music into the deepening gold of evening. You leave the reflective basin behind, moving toward a narrower corridor lined with low hedges and flowering vines. The scent here is different, more herbal, a mixture of thyme, mint, and something slightly bitter that reminds you of wet stone. It's calming in an earthy way, grounding after the soaring heights of the upper terraces. Your footsteps are slow, deliberate, letting the garden dictate the rhythm, the tempo of your breath. The corridor opens into a shaded alcove where sunlight filters through a lattice of reeds, forming patterns that dance across the stone floor. You pause to watch the interplay of light and shadow. It's hypnotic, like a natural kaleidoscope, shifting with every tiny movement of wind and leaf. You can imagine the ancients deliberately planting this corridor, knowing how much such soft lighting can calm the mind. Historians still argue whether every detail of the Hanging Gardens was intentional or if some were simply accidents of growth and gravity. But standing here, it's hard not to feel the meticulous care in every vine, every stone. A low fountain murmurs from the far corner, its water trickling over moss-covered rocks and into a narrow channel that disappears beneath the hedges. You crouch to watch a tiny frog hop from one stone to another, pausing momentarily to catch the sunlight. The garden is alive with small, quiet movements. Insects buzzing lazily, leaves trembling in the breeze, water dancing over stone. It's a rhythm that doesn't demand attention, but when you notice it, it feels like the heartbeat of the terrace itself. As you walk deeper, you pass a small bench tucked beneath a flowering pergola. You sit down, letting the warmth of the stones seep into your skin. Above you, vines hang in loose curtains, their blossoms swaying gently. A few petals drift down, landing on your shoulders like tiny confetti. You smile softly. In the distance, you can hear the faint hum of bees moving among the flowers, steady, purposeful, soothing. You reach out to touch one of the blooms. Its petals are soft and warm, tinged with a pale lavender that seems almost to glow. You inhale deeply. The scent is intoxicating, floral but slightly earthy, the perfect counterbalance to the warmth of the sun and the coolness of the stones beneath your feet. Somewhere in your mind, a cheeky thought surfaces. If someone bottled this smell, it would probably be the best sleep aid ever marketed. You chuckle quietly to yourself. Continuing along the path, you encounter a narrow stream trickling down from the upper terrace. Water flows over flat stones, creating tiny waterfalls that glint in the light. The babbling is steady and soft, soothing like a lullaby you didn't know you needed. You kneel beside it and run your fingers through the current. The water is cool, but not uncomfortably so, invigorating yet calming all at once. You notice tiny fish darting between the stones, shimmering silver in the dappled light. They are small, quick, and perfectly content in their own world. It makes you think about the delicate balance of this place, how every plant, every stone, every drop of water exists in harmony with the others. Even centuries ago, the gardeners would have understood this. Some scholars still debate whether the Hanging Gardens were truly a technological marvel or more a testament to careful observation of natural cycles. But either way, it's clear that whoever designed this terrace respected the quiet genius of life itself. You stand and continue along the path, which now begins to curve gently upward. The hedges grow taller, interspersed with flowering shrubs whose colors shift as the sun tilts in the sky. Pinks, purples, and golds that blend softly together. Butterflies drift lazily among them, wings catching the light. You watch one land on a pale flower, still a stone, its colors flashing briefly in the sun before it lifts off again. Further along, you spot a small pavilion tucked into a corner of the terrace. Its roof is supported by slender columns, each carved with reliefs of animals, lions, gazelles, and birds, all rendered in delicate detail. The pavilion is open on all sides, allowing the soft breeze to carry scents and sounds from the surrounding gardens. You step inside, feeling the shade immediately. The stone floor is cool beneath your feet, and the air smells faintly of damp earth and blooming vines. You sit on a low bench, letting yourself sink into the quiet. The garden stretches out before you in every direction. Terraces stacked like steps to the sky, water channels weaving through greenery, flowers swaying in a gentle rhythm. Somewhere beyond the vines, you hear the faint murmur of another waterfall, a steady pulse in the background. It's hypnotic, meditative. You close your eyes and let it wash over you,
letting your thoughts slow to match the tempo of the garden. A small breeze shifts the vines, and a cluster of petals falls onto the stone floor beside you. You reach down and touch them, marveling at their softness. Somewhere in the back of your mind, a curious fact pops up. Ancient Babylonians sometimes arranged flowers according to seasonal cycles, believing that certain plants promoted peace and well-being. You imagine the gardener carefully planning each terrace, each plant selection, to maintain both beauty and balance. Historians still argue whether this was ritualistic or purely aesthetic, but the effect is undeniably calming. You stand and move toward the edge of the terrace, where a narrow railing overlooks the levels below. From here, the gardens appear almost infinite, a cascading blend of green, stone, and water. The terraces below glimmer in the fading sunlight, the channels reflecting shards of gold. You catch glimpses of flowering trees and fruit-laden branches. Somewhere in the distance, a small bird takes flight, its wings casting tiny shadows across the pool beneath. A faint scent of honey and herbs drifts on the breeze. You inhale slowly, letting it fill your senses. You realize that the hanging gardens were not just a place of visual beauty, they were a full sensory experience. Sight, sound, smell, touch, even the feeling of air and sun on your skin all work together to create calm. You let yourself feel it fully, allowing each moment to stretch and linger. As you begin to follow the path upward again, the garden opens slightly, revealing a stone platform overlooking the next terrace. Here, the plants grow taller, the air feels fresher, and the sound of flowing water strengthens. You pause at the platform, gazing out across the terraces below, and realize that each step you've taken has led to this perspective. The gardens unfolding in layers, each one a unique world, each one seamlessly connected to the others. You lean against the railing and watch as a small group of bees works its way along a flowering vine. The garden hums quietly around them. You think about how much care must have gone into planning every terrace, every channel, every plant. It's a reminder that beauty can be deliberate, slow, and persistent, a far cry from the hurried, transient world you've left behind below. You take one last breath of the fragrant air, letting it fill your lungs fully. The sun tilts toward the horizon, casting long shadows that stretch across the terraces, painting them in shades of gold and amber. You feel a sense of deep contentment settle over you, a quiet gratitude for the chance to wander, to witness, to breathe in a place where every detail has been chosen with intention. Then, with gentle steps, you begin to follow the path upward once more, toward the next terrace, carrying the sense of calm, the soft rhythm of water and wind, and the lingering fragrance of flowers with you as the hanging gardens continue to unfold around you. The path begins to narrow as you climb, flanked now by densely packed flowering shrubs that brush against your arms, releasing faint clouds of scent with every movement. You inhale deeply, savoring the subtle perfume of jasmine, wild mint, and something almost imperceptibly spicy, perhaps saffron or a herb long forgotten. The temperature feels perfect here, warm but not oppressive, with a faint breeze teasing the leaves above. You notice how the garden seems to orchestrate the air itself, moving scents and temperatures in ways that feel deliberate, even intimate. A few steps further, the path opens into a small courtyard, enclosed by low stone walls. The walls are covered with creeping vines, their leaves a deep velvety green, and punctuated by delicate flowers in shades of lilac and white. Sunlight filters through the canopy above, creating patterns of light and shadow on the ground, each one shifting slowly as the breeze moves. You pause to watch, feeling the same quiet fascination you did with the kaleidoscopic corridors below. Even in the subtle play of light, there is intentional beauty, or at least something that feels like it. Historians still argue whether every terrace was planned with such meticulous attention to detail, or whether some of this was accidental growth, nurtured into artistry over decades. Either way, the effect is undeniable. In the center of the courtyard, a small, shallow fountain burbles quietly, its water trickling into a rectangular basin lined with smooth stones. You kneel beside it and let your fingers trail through the cool water. Tiny ripples spread outward, distorting the reflection of the sky and the surrounding foliage. A small dragonfly lands nearby, its wings shimmering like liquid crystal in the soft light. You watch it hover for a moment, mesmerized by its delicate balance, before it zips away, leaving only the faint echo of movement in the air. You rise and continue along the path that arcs gently upward, following the sound of running water to the next terrace. Here, the greenery grows taller, the air slightly more humid. Vines drape down from overhead trellises, their tendrils reaching almost to the stone floor. You brush your hand along one as you pass, feeling its smooth, waxy texture, and marvel at how each plant seems to thrive in harmony with its neighbors. You catch a glimpse of a bee delicately alighting on a flower, its tiny legs dusted with pollen. You smile quietly. Even in a garden meant for kings, nature's small creatures carry on their timeless routines. The terrace begins to widen, revealing clusters of flowering trees that tower above you. Their branches form a soft canopy, filtering the sunlight into a warm, golden glow. Beneath them, smaller shrubs and herbaceous plants fill the spaces with vibrant color. Deep purples, pale blues, and blush pinks that shift as the wind moves through them. You notice a faint, rhythmic sound, not the water, but something else. You follow it and discover a small stone instrument embedded in the terrace wall, designed so that the breeze passing over it produces a gentle, melodic hum. It's subtle, almost imperceptible, but it blends seamlessly with the sounds of water and wildlife, creating a quiet symphony. As you walk, your fingers brush over the smooth edges of stone balustrades, tracing the patterns carved into them, spirals, stars, and abstract floral motifs. They feel worn but comforting under your fingertips, as if the garden itself has aged alongside you. Somewhere, a small bird chirps, its call brief and bright, echoing off the walls of the terrace. You remember that the Babylonians often designed their gardens to encourage birds, using them as natural pest control and, perhaps, for the soft joy of their songs. Historians still argue whether this was a functional choice or an aesthetic one, but it seems clear that the birds contribute to the calm that envelops you. The path begins to slope upward again, guiding you to a slightly higher terrace. Here, the air feels cooler, and the scent of flowers mingles with the earthy aroma of wet stone and damp moss. You notice small channels cut into the terrace floor, guiding water from an upper level down through the plants. The water sparkles in the sunlight, forming tiny cascades as it flows over stone edges, and the sound is hypnotic, steady, gentle, reassuring. You step lightly, careful not to disturb the delicate balance of nature and architecture around you. Ahead, a stone pavilion emerges from the greenery, its roof supported by slender columns entwined with climbing vines. Inside, a shallow pool mirrors the sky above. You step closer and lean over, watching the ripples that form as a light breeze passes across the surface. A small frog emerges from beneath a leaf, peeking briefly before diving back under the water. You smile. Life thrives in even the tiniest nooks of these gardens. You walk along the edge of the pavilion, tracing the carved stone reliefs that depict various scenes: animals drinking from streams, musicians playing lutes, and attendants tending flowers. You marvel at the skill required to carve such intricate images and the patience it must have taken. You wonder about the hands that made these carvings, young, old, meticulous, perhaps humming softly to themselves as they worked. As you move beyond the pavilion, you notice a slight incline leading to the highest point of this terrace. The sunlight here is warmer, the air carrying the faint fragrance of ripening fruit.
Small palm trees rise in clusters, their fronds swaying gently, casting dappled shadows across the path. You reach out to touch the rough texture of the bark and feel the subtle pulse of life beneath your fingertips. Steady, reassuring, ancient.
A few steps later, you find a stone bench nestled beneath a flowering arbor. You sit, letting your body sink into the cool surface. From this vantage point, you can see the layers of terraces below, the water channels glinting in the light, the flowers and trees blending into a living tapestry. You take a deep breath and allow the calm of the garden to seep into every corner of your being. The gentle sound of running water, the hum of insects, the occasional bird call, all of it merges into a quiet, soothing symphony. As you close your eyes for a moment, you recall a curious detail about Babylonian gardens. Some terraces were rumored to have exotic plants imported from distant lands, brought in not just for their beauty, but for their symbolic meanings. Historians still debate the accuracy of these claims, but imagining the scent of distant lands blending with local flora adds a layer of magic to the garden. You let yourself drift in the thought, carried along by the serene rhythm of the space. You rise from the bench and continue along the path, noticing a series of small fountains that line the way. Each fountain is unique. Some spout water into shallow basins, others trickle over carved stone lions or abstract floral motifs. The water catches the sunlight, casting tiny prisms of color across the stone. You move slowly, savoring each detail, aware that the garden is not just a visual marvel, but a living, breathing organism, with water, plants, animals, and stone all interacting in delicate balance. The terrace widens as you approach its far edge, where a low railing overlooks the levels below. From here, you can see the entire lower garden stretching out in layers, each one more lush and intricate than the last. Streams glimmer like ribbons of silver. Trees sway gracefully, and flowers bloom in an orchestrated symphony of color. You feel a sense of awe, not the dramatic awe of danger or grandeur, but the quiet, profound awe of harmony and intention. The sun dips lower in the sky, casting a soft golden glow across the terrace. The shadows lengthen, and the air carries the faint scent of evening flowers opening. You take a slow, deliberate breath, letting the garden's rhythm sync with your own. The hanging gardens, whether entirely real or partly imagined, have a way of grounding you, reminding you of the gentle power of nature carefully tended. With a final glance across the terrace, you rise and continue along the path, moving toward the stairs that lead to the next level, carrying with you the calm, the rhythm, and the quiet magic of this enchanting garden. You climb the next flight of stairs slowly, letting the soft, even rhythm of your steps match the gentle cadence of the garden around you. The walls are covered in thick vines, their tendrils curling and twisting like lazy serpents basking in the sunlight. Occasionally, a bloom catches your eye, a bright orange or deep purple, startling against the deep green. You lean closer to inhale, and the fragrance is slightly spicy, floral, and oddly comforting, like the memory of a perfume you once dreamed about but never smelled in waking life. At the top, the terrace opens into a quiet courtyard, smaller than the previous levels, but densely packed with plants. The layout here is less formal, almost naturalistic, as if the designers deliberately chose to let the greenery feel a little wilder. Moss carpets the stone floor in patches, and tiny flowers peek through the cracks. You pause, letting your eyes roam over the lush textures. The contrast of rough stone against delicate petals, the bright green of new leaves against the darker, mature foliage. A narrow canal winds through the terrace, water trickling over small stones in a soothing rhythm. You follow it with your eyes, noticing how it meanders lazily between clusters of plants. The sound is hypnotic, a soft murmur that pulls at your thoughts and settles them. You kneel beside it and dip a hand into the cool water.
The sensation is grounding, a gentle reminder that this garden is not just a visual delight, but a living ecosystem, carefully balanced between engineering and nature. Nearby, a small bronze statue peeks from behind a flowering bush. Its surface has darkened with age, but the carved figure, a musician it seems, holding a lyre, still exudes a quiet dignity. You trace its contours with your fingertips, marveling at the skill required to create something so intricate. Scholars still argue whether all the sculptures in the Hanging Gardens were purely decorative or if some held symbolic meaning. But you feel certain that this one was meant to remind anyone passing by that music and serenity are inseparable. You rise and continue along a narrow stone path, the air growing heavier and more fragrant as you move. Here, the garden seems to embrace you, foliage brushing your arms and shoulders. Tiny insects hum in the warm air, their gentle vibration blending with the sound of water to create a soft symphony. A few butterflies flutter lazily among the flowers, wings catching the sunlight in brief flashes of iridescence. You smile, noticing how the small creatures feel integral to the garden's rhythm, each movement, each sound contributing to the whole. The path opens into a small pavilion, tucked beneath the overhanging branches of fruit trees. The roof is supported by slender stone columns wrapped in vines, and the floor is cool beneath your feet. You step inside and pause, letting your eyes adjust to the filtered light. The pavilion offers a perfect vantage point. You can see the terraces below, the winding canals, and the faint glimmer of the reflecting pool far off in the distance. You walk to the edge and lean on the stone railing. The view is breathtaking, but in a quiet, understated way. Unlike the upper terraces, this level feels intimate, personal, a space designed for contemplation, for slow observation rather than grandeur. You notice a cluster of figs hanging low on one of the trees, their dark purple skins almost luminous in the sunlight. The Babylonians were known to cultivate fruit trees in their gardens, and historians still argue whether these trees were meant primarily for food, beauty, or both. Here, it seems impossible to separate the three. As you move along the terrace, the sound of running water grows more distinct. You follow it to a small waterfall, cascading from a carved stone basin into a shallow pool below. The water sparkles as it falls, catching the sunlight in tiny prisms. You kneel beside it and let your hand drift through the gentle current. Tiny fish dart beneath the surface, quick and shimmering, disappearing before you can focus on them fully. The movement is mesmerizing, a small dance that repeats endlessly, unnoticed but essential to the life of the terrace. You rise and continue along the path, brushing past low hedges and flowering plants. A gentle wind stirs, moving the leaves in a slow, hypnotic wave. Somewhere nearby, you hear the faint plucking of a stringed instrument, a lyre perhaps, carried from a lower terrace. The sound is soft, almost imperceptible, but it weaves seamlessly into the ambient symphony of water, wind, and foliage. You pause, letting the music settle in your mind. It feels like the gardens themselves are humming, each note perfectly tuned to the rhythm of nature. A narrow stairway leads you to the final section of this terrace. As you climb, the fragrance of flowers intensifies, mingling with the subtle, earthy scent of damp stone. You notice tiny buds forming along the vines, the promise of blooms yet to come. You reach the top and find a small circular platform surrounded by flowering shrubs. Here, the garden feels almost sacred, a hidden sanctuary above the bustle of the terraces below. You sit on the cool stone surface, letting the air wrap around you. The soundscape is complete. Water trickling, leaves rustling, distant music, insects humming. The warmth of the sun is softened by the shade of overhanging branches, creating a perfect balance between light and shadow. You lean back, closing your eyes, and let yourself absorb the stillness. In this quiet, you notice the small details that make the garden feel alive. the glint of sunlight on a dew-laden leaf, the subtle sway of a flower in the breeze, the ripple of water disturbed by an unseen fish. The hanging gardens, whether fully historical or partly myth, exist here in these moments, not just in grand design, but in the tiny, imperceptible movements that create harmony. You rise and walk to the terrace edge once more, gazing down at the levels below. Each terrace unfolds like a page of a book, a story told in stone, water, and greenery. The channels of water glint in the fading light, the flowers bloom with quiet brilliance, and the birds flit through the branches as if aware of the serenity that envelops this place. The sun has begun its slow descent, casting long, gentle shadows across the terrace. The air carries the faint hum of evening insects, blending with the whisper of leaves and the soft trickle of water. You take a deep breath, letting the rhythm of the garden synchronize with your own. The hanging gardens, in their quiet, deliberate beauty, have become more than a place. They are a feeling, a meditation, a moment suspended between the tangible and the imagined. As you step toward the stairs leading to the next level, you pause to touch the petals of a nearby flower, soft and warm in your hand. The garden feels alive under your fingertips, a living, breathing organism that invites you to move slowly, to notice, to rest. You carry the calm with you as you continue upward, ready to explore the next terrace and whatever quiet wonders it may hold. The stairs leading to the next terrace are narrower, almost intimate, bordered by low hedges that lean slightly inward as if guiding you along the path. Each step is worn smooth by countless feet, and your hands brush the edges, feeling the subtle grooves etched by time. The scent here shifts again, heavier, warmer, with hints of marjoram and honeyed blossoms. You inhale slowly, letting it settle deep in your lungs, grounding you in the garden's rhythm. At the top, the terrace opens into a long, narrow corridor lined with flowering shrubs and small trees. Sunlight filters through the leaves in delicate patterns, dancing across the stone floor in irregular, mesmerizing mosaics. You follow the path, your eyes tracing the ever-shifting light, allowing it to slow your thoughts. Somewhere above, a faint hum of insects rises and falls, blending with the distant trickle of water to create a quiet symphony. It's the kind of sound that makes you forget the passage of time, where minutes stretch like hours in gentle suspension. As you walk, your fingers brush against the foliage. Tiny buds release subtle scents when touched, mingling with the heavier fragrance of flowers in bloom. You notice a particularly bright cluster of crimson blossoms and lean in to admire the intricate patterns of their petals. A butterfly hovers nearby, wings flashing in iridescent blues and purples before it lands briefly on a leaf, seemingly aware of the serene stillness surrounding it. You can't help but smile at these small, precise bursts of life, reminders that even in a constructed paradise, nature asserts its subtle magic. The corridor leads to a small pavilion tucked beneath overhanging branches. Its roof is supported by slender columns entwined with climbing vines, and inside, a shallow pool mirrors the sky. You step closer, leaning over the edge to watch the surface ripple as a gentle breeze stirs the water. Tiny fish swim just beneath, their scales flickering like liquid silver. You trace their movements with your eyes, mesmerized by the grace of their deliberate, calm arcs. Historians still argue whether these pools were purely decorative or served practical purposes, such as cooling the terrace air or feeding ornamental fish for leisure. Either way, they bring a hypnotic rhythm to the garden's design. You rise and continue along the path, noticing the small details that make this terrace feel so alive. Carved stones mark the edges of planting beds, delicate patterns of stars, leaves, and abstract shapes, worn smooth by centuries of hands brushing past. You pause to touch the carvings, appreciating the tactile connection between past and present. Somewhere nearby, a low bronze bell swings gently in the breeze, releasing a soft, uneven chime. It's so subtle that you barely hear it, yet it blends perfectly with the chorus of water, leaves, and distant bird calls. The terrace widens into a small square, dominated by clusters of flowering trees whose branches create a soft canopy overhead. Sunlight dapples through the leaves, casting moving shadows across the stone floor. Beneath the trees, flowering shrubs bloom in gentle waves of white, lilac, and soft pink. You kneel to examine the plants, noticing the textures, some petals velvety, others smooth and delicate. The fragrances are layered, complex, and oddly intoxicating, almost like the garden itself is breathing with you. A narrow channel of water winds through the square, guiding tiny cascades over flat stones. You follow it with your eyes, observing the way it twists and turns, reflecting sunlight in shimmering ribbons. The water is so clear that you can see small fish darting beneath the surface, their movements precise and hypnotic. You dip your fingers into the channel, feeling the coolness and letting the rhythm of flowing water settle your mind. At the far edge of the terrace, a small staircase leads to another pavilion, open on all sides and framed by flowering vines. You step inside, the stone floor cool beneath your feet. From here, the view is expansive. You can see the terraces below, their intricate layers of greenery, water, and flowers, and beyond them, glimpses of the city with the Euphrates glinting like a silver ribbon in the distance. You lean against the railing and watch the sun shift, casting warm, soft light over everything. You notice a pair of birds fluttering among the branches, their calls faint but melodious. A slight breeze causes leaves to tremble, and the faint hum of insects rises again. It's a soft, hypnotic layering of sound and movement, a living meditation built into stone and soil. Somewhere nearby, a gardener tends to a cluster of flowering plants, carefully trimming leaves and adjusting small channels of water. You watch their movements, slow and deliberate, and realize that the gardeners are as much a part of the garden's rhythm as the plants, water, and wildlife. You follow the path to the next corner of the terrace, where a series of small fountains line the edge. Each fountain is unique. Some trickle into shallow basins, others spill over carved stone lions or floral motifs. The water glints in the sunlight, forming tiny rainbows that dance across the surrounding leaves. You step slowly from one fountain to the next, letting your gaze linger on each ripple, each gleam of light. The terrace slopes gently upward again, leading you to the highest point of this level. Here, the garden feels almost like a sanctuary. A single stone bench sits beneath a flowering arbor, perfectly positioned to take in the view. You sit and let your body sink into the cool surface, closing your eyes for a moment to absorb the sounds, scents, and sensations around you. The garden feels alive in every detail. The whisper of leaves, the gentle trickle of water, the soft flutter of wings, the subtle movement of sunlight. You remember reading that some terraces may have included exotic plants from distant lands, brought in to impress visitors or provide symbolic meanings. Historians still debate which species were truly present, but the idea adds an extra layer of wonder. You imagine the scent of far-off flowers mingling with local blooms, a reminder that even in ancient times, curiosity and connection spanned vast distances. You rise and follow the path toward the next terrace, the air thick with the calm of evening. The sunlight softens, shadows lengthen, and the fragrance of flowers intensifies, mingling with the earthy scent of damp stone. Every step feels deliberate, slow, unhurried, as if the garden itself encourages mindfulness. The hanging gardens, in all their layered complexity, seem to move with you, guiding your thoughts and breathing in quiet harmony with your own. You continue upward, feeling the terrace slope gently beneath your feet. The path narrows slightly, flanked by low hedges whose leaves brush your arms with a delicate, almost shy touch. The air carries a mix of scents now. The sweet warmth of flowering jasmine, the sharp, clean tan of mint, and something faintly resinous, like pine or cedar, from the wooden trellises overhead. You inhale deeply, letting the aromas settle into your mind, a quiet meditation in scent. The terrace opens into a courtyard that feels both intimate and expansive at the same time. Clusters of flowering shrubs form soft barriers, guiding your movement along curved paths that twist gently beneath the overhanging vines. Sunlight filters through the leaves, casting shifting mosaics of shadow and gold across the stone floor. You pause to watch the play of light, noticing how even a single moving leaf can alter the pattern across the ground. Historians still argue whether these effects were planned or simply a lucky consequence of nature. But standing here, it feels as though every shadow, every beam of sunlight was orchestrated for calm. A small channel of water winds its way through the courtyard, glinting in the soft light. You follow it with your eyes, noticing tiny ripples that catch and scatter the sunlight, turning the water into ribbons of liquid gold. You kneel beside it, dipping your fingers into the cool stream. A faint shiver runs up your arm as the water touches your skin, grounding you further in the present moment. Small fish dart beneath the surface, their scales glinting silver in the light. You watch them for a long while, hypnotized by the gentle arcs and sweeps of their movements. You rise and walk along the path, which begins to widen into a platform overlooking the terraces below. From here, you can see the intricate layers of the garden. Water channels twisting like ribbons, clusters of trees and shrubs, flowers blooming in harmonious color patterns. The view stretches beyond the gardens themselves, reaching to the city and the winding Euphrates, catching the sun in flashes of silver. The perspective makes you appreciate the scale of the gardens, the meticulous care involved in constructing them, and the quiet genius required to maintain such a paradise. A small pavilion sits at the far edge of this terrace, its roof supported by slender columns entwined with vines. You step inside and take a seat on the cool stone bench. The air here is thick with the scent of blooming flowers, mingling with the subtle fragrance of damp stone. From your vantage point, you can hear a faint murmur of water from a fountain below, the soft hum of insects, and the occasional bird call, a layered symphony of quiet life. You lean back, closing your eyes for a moment, letting these sounds wash over you. Somewhere nearby, a gardener tends to a cluster of flowering plants, pruning leaves and adjusting water channels with slow, deliberate movements. The rhythm of their work feels meditative, almost musical, and you realize that the garden's calm is not only in its design, but in the gentle, mindful labor of those who care for it. It's a reminder that beauty requires patience, observation, and care. As you stand and continue along the path, you notice small fountains embedded in the terrace walls. Each one is unique. Some spill water into shallow stone basins, others cascade over carved figures of animals or abstract designs. The water glints in the sunlight, scattering tiny prisms across the floor. You pause at each fountain, letting your eyes follow the movement of the water, the sparkle of the droplets, and the play of light. The gardens are alive in these small details, and your senses slowly begin to attune to the soft rhythms that structure the space. The path narrows again, guiding you toward the uppermost corner of the terrace. Here, the greenery is denser, almost embracing the pathway, with vines curling overhead to form natural arches. Sunlight filters in slender beams, illuminating clusters of blossoms. You reach out and gently touch a flower, soft and warm in your hand. Its petals feel delicate, almost ephemeral, yet somehow enduring. A quiet reminder that life persists even in the most fleeting moments. Ahead, a small circular platform emerges, surrounded by flowering shrubs and low hedges. It is a place of quiet reflection, offering an unobstructed view of the terraces below. You step onto it, letting the cool stone floor ground your feet. From here, The water channels gleam in the sunlight. The flowers bloom in gentle bursts of color, and the trees sway softly in the breeze. You feel an almost imperceptible pulse in the air, a rhythm that syncs with your own heartbeat. You walk slowly along the edge of the platform, tracing your fingers along the carved stone railing. The carvings are intricate, depicting abstract patterns, vines, and small animals in delicate relief. You marvel at the craftsmanship, wondering about the hands that created them. Historians still debate whether these designs held symbolic meaning or were purely decorative, but to you, they feel like a quiet celebration of life itself. A breeze stirs, moving the leaves and sending tiny petals drifting across the platform. You watch them float lazily, carried by the wind. And for a moment, the world feels suspended, a place where time slows, and the only things that matter are the sensations of the present. The gentle hum of the garden surrounds you, water trickling, insects buzzing, leaves rustling. It's a calm that seems almost tangible, like a soft blanket draped over your shoulders. You sit on a low bench beneath an overhanging vine, letting your body relax into the cool stone. The view stretches outward, layers of terraces cascading below, each filled with water, greenery, and flowers. Somewhere in the distance, a pair of doves land on a nearby branch, their soft cooing blending seamlessly with the ambient sounds. You close your eyes, letting the tranquility sink in, your thoughts slowing, your breathing deepening. The hanging gardens feel alive in a way that transcends time. Every stone, every channel of water, every leaf seems to pulse with quiet energy. You realize that the garden is not just a physical space, but a meditation in motion, a carefully choreographed interaction of nature and human care. You take a deep breath, letting the fragrance of flowers, the hum of insects, and the soft murmur of water fill your senses completely. You rise and begin to follow the path back toward the stairs leading to the next and final terrace. Each step is slow, deliberate, echoing softly on the stone. The air carries the lingering sense of evening blooms, and the sun casts long shadows across the terraces, painting the garden in hues of gold and amber. You feel a profound sense of calm settle over you, a quiet reverence for the harmony of this space. As you take the last few steps, the gentle chime of a distant bronze bell drifts through the air, carried on the soft breeze. It's a sound so subtle, so fleeting, that it barely registers, yet it feels like the garden's way of acknowledging your presence, a quiet benediction as you move toward the final terrace and the evening's calm. You ascend the final steps, feeling the gradual warmth of the sun softening into a golden haze as it prepares to rest beyond the horizon. This terrace, the highest of them all, stretches before you in a gentle plateau of stone and greenery, a crown of the hanging gardens. The air here is softer, tinged with the scent of evening blooms and the faint mineral tang of the stones warmed by the fading sun. You step onto the terrace slowly, allowing the quiet majesty of the space to settle around you, wrapping you in a sense of completion, of arrival. The terrace is alive in subtle ways. Water channels carve intricate patterns across the stone, their trickle steady and soothing, guiding your gaze towards small reflective pools that mirror the sky above. A faint breeze stirs the leaves of flowering trees, sending a delicate shower of petals drifting to the ground like soft confetti. You reach out to catch one, marveling at its delicate texture and intricate patterning. And for a moment, the world feels suspended in slow motion. Somewhere beneath the canopy, tiny insects hum quietly, and a bird flits between branches, wings catching the golden light in brief flashes. You begin to walk along the terrace, your fingers brushing over the smooth, sun-warmed stone. Each step seems deliberate, echoing softly in the open space. Here, the garden is less structured than the terraces below. It feels more organic,
a deliberate invitation to pause and linger. You notice clusters of flowering shrubs mingling with small fruit trees, their branches heavy with ripening figs and pomegranates. The Babylonians cultivated fruit in their gardens, not merely for sustenance, but for aesthetic pleasure and perhaps ritual significance. Historians still argue whether the selection of fruit species was symbolic or practical, but the sensory effect is undeniable. You approach a small pavilion tucked into a corner of the terrace. Its columns are entwined with climbing vines, leaves brushing gently against your skin as you enter. Inside, a shallow pool mirrors the soft evening sky, tinted pink and amber by the fading light. Tiny fish glide beneath the surface, their movements slow and hypnotic. You kneel beside the pool, letting your fingers trail through the water, sending ripples outward that distort the reflection. The sensation is calming, a tactile connection to a space built not only for sight and sound, but for touch and presence. A faint breeze carries the scent of flowers and the distant hum of the city below. You lean against the stone railing, gazing out over the layers of terraces cascading beneath you. Each terrace tells a story of careful design, human ingenuity, and the quiet persistence of life. The water channels gleam like silver ribbons, the flowers bloom in harmonious color, and the trees sway in a measured rhythm. You realize the hanging gardens are more than a collection of plants. They are a living, breathing meditation, an interplay of art, nature, and patience. As the sun continues its descent, shadows stretch across the terrace, painting intricate patterns on the stone floor. A soft, golden light bathes the plants in water, transforming the space into a tranquil dreamscape. You hear the faint pluck of a lyre from somewhere below, the notes drifting upward in gentle, uneven pulses. The sound blends seamlessly with the water, the wind, and the subtle movements of creatures, a symphony of calm designed not to command attention, but to invite it gently. You walk along the terrace's edge, noticing small fountains embedded in the stone walls. Water spills over carved stone lions, abstract floral patterns, and small basins, catching the last rays of sunlight in sparkling arcs. Each fountain is distinct, yet all are connected by a shared rhythm, the steady, soothing pulse of moving water. You pause at one, kneeling to run your fingers through the shallow pool it creates. Tiny fish dart beneath your touch, shimmering in fleeting flashes of gold and silver. You smile quietly, reminded of the delicate interplay of life here, each plant, animal, and human effort contributing to a serene whole. The terrace opens into a circular platform at its center, framed by flowering shrubs and low hedges. You step onto it and take a seat on a stone bench, letting the cool surface ground your body. The garden stretches below in cascading layers of green, water, and blooms, each terrace a chapter in a living story. From this vantage point, the Euphrates glints in the distance, a silver ribbon winding through the fading light. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the symphony of sound, scent, and sensation settle around you, your mind slowing to match the rhythm of the garden. A faint breeze stirs, carrying with it the scent of jasmine, marjoram, and damp earth. Petals drift past, landing softly on your shoulders, as if the garden itself is tucking you into its gentle embrace. Somewhere nearby, a gardener adjusts a water channel, moving with deliberate, unhurried precision. You realize that the calm of this space comes not only from design, but from the careful, mindful attention of countless caretakers over generations. The harmony you feel is the product of human care, natural growth, and time itself. You lean back, eyes tracing the golden light on the terraces below. Tiny birds flit between branches, the faint hum of insects rises and falls, and the last glow of sunlight illuminates the water channels. Everything here feels alive yet peaceful, dynamic yet still. The hanging gardens, whether historical or partly imagined, embody the perfect balance between order and spontaneity, work and rest, human ingenuity and natural beauty. You exhale slowly, letting the rhythm of the garden wash over you. Every detail, the water, the wind, the flowers, the birds, the sunlight, feels purposeful and gentle. The layers of terraces below seem to breathe in unison with your own heartbeat, each element a part of the larger harmony. You sit quietly, savoring this sense of completion, of stillness, of being fully present in a space that exists beyond time. The light fades further, softening the colors of the flowers and the surfaces of the stone. The water channels catch the last glimmers of sunlight, sending tiny prisms across the terrace. The gentle sounds, trickling water, humming insects, rustling leaves, continue unabated, creating a lullaby that soothes the mind and body alike. You take a final deep breath, letting the calm fill every corner of your awareness. You rise and stand at the edge of the platform, gazing down at the terraces cascading beneath you one last time. The air is cool, scented with the subtle perfume of evening blossoms, and the light fades to a soft rosy glow. Somewhere far below, the faint music of a lyre drifts upward, mingling with the gentle murmur of water. You feel a profound sense of peace, a connection to the timeless care, intention, and quiet genius of the hanging gardens. You sink back onto the bench, letting your body relax fully, every muscle loosening into the cool stone beneath you. The sun has slipped completely below the horizon, leaving a gentle afterglow that softens the edges of the terrace. Shadows deepen, blending the colors of flowers and leaves into a soft tapestry of muted golds, greens, and pinks. The water channels continue their gentle murmur, the sound steady and reassuring, a reminder that life persists in quiet, patient cycles. The fragrances around you grow softer, mingling into a soothing perfume of earth, blossoms, and stone. You inhale slowly, letting each scent carry your thoughts further from the bustle of the day and deeper into this timeless space. The birds have quieted, leaving only the soft hum of insects and the occasional ripple of water as your companions. You feel a slow, gentle drowsiness settle over you, your mind floating in rhythm with the garden. The terraces below are softened by evening light, each layer folding gently into the next. You picture the water reflecting stars soon to appear overhead, the flowers closing, the leaves swaying softly in the night breeze. The garden seems to breathe with you, a quiet lullaby of life, stone, and water. Each moment stretches, unhurried, inviting you to let go of tension, expectation, and thought. You close your eyes, feeling the calm sink deeper. You can imagine the faint scent of jasmine lingering in the air, the soft splash of water in the pools, and the gentle warmth of stone against your fingertips. The hanging gardens in this quiet evening become not just a place, but a state of mind. A serene refuge, a gentle meditation, a slow, rhythmic heartbeat of history and imagination. Let your breathing match the rhythm of the garden. Let your body soften, your thoughts drift, and your senses settle. You are here. You are present. You are calm. And as you rest in this suspended tranquility, the world outside slips away, leaving only the gentle, enduring peace of the hanging gardens. Sweet dreams!